Welcome to part 3 of the Cryptozoology and Bigfoot presentation that occurred in Salt Lake City, Utah on the 4th through the 7th of September 2013. This was my presentation. In part 1, we met Mr. Bigfoot and we discussed the need for a facial database and how it can be used to further study the Bigfoot cryptids. In part 2 of the presentation, we looked at the characteristics of both their feet and their hands. Now, before you go out there and start picking up scat and sending it off to the laboratories to have it analyzed for DNA, and I want to clear up a few things. One, scat and urine are not very good medium for determining animal species. It has to be very, very fresh. If it's old at all, the bacteria within the scat starts degrading the DNA of whatever it ate will be included in the scat. So it's going to be semi-contaminated to begin with. But the bacteria pretty well destroys any DNA evidence that might identify the animal unless it's very, very fresh. Now, many people have asked me, well, why don't you run down and have it DNA tested? Almost every time I find a pile of scat or some hair or something like that. Well, most people don't realize that DNA testing starts at about $500 and goes up into thousands of dollars depending upon what you want done. And plus the fact that most, when it comes to species identification, really don't want to do it. They want you to be a law enforcement agency, an academic associated with some university, or they want you to have tons of money. In any case, if you have it tested, more than likely what you're going to get back is contaminated or animal species unknown, both which do not tell you very much. The animal species unknown at least tells you that it's not a bear or a moose or a human or something like that. Since most of us can't afford to run to the DNA store and get our scat tested, we need to find a different way to be able to tell what kind of animal is dropping all this poo. Let's look at how animals eat and what they eat with. Bears and other predators, such as lions and so forth, have sharp, tearing teeth. They basically rip and swallow. They don't do a real good job of chewing. Even a bear, when he eats berries, his scat's going to be full of non-chewed berries of the material in the scat. Now, a Bigfoot, guess what? He has molars. He can chew really good, and most of his scat is going to be finely processed. It's going to come out when it's in the very fresh state, like soft serve ice cream. One more note about scat. Generally speaking, when the animal eats a lot of red meat, the scat will basically turn dark or almost black. When they're eating vegetables and plants, it is more likely a brown color. Yes, I believe that Bigfoot does use his scat for marking his territory. Well, we've looked at an awful lot of poo, so let's get on to something a little bit nicer. The next thing up is Bigfoot hair. How can you tell if it's Bigfoot hair? Again, the typical Bigfoot hunter can't run down to the local DNA store and have his hair tested. So there needs to be other ways that they can get an idea as to whether or not this is high probability Bigfoot hair. The picture showing above is actually a human hair. In fact, it is mine. It's under 400 magnification under a microscope, and it gives you a chance to see the medulla, the center that runs down the middle, and the consistency of the hair on the outside. If you change the focus, you can look at the scaling on the hair. All this combined with the diameter of the hair will tell you basically what kind of animal it is. And there are databases out there that you can go to look up things like squirrel hair, bear hair, horse hair, and so forth. So there is a way to do it optically under a microscope. Okay, while I've been talking, we've been looking at different types of hairs and hair roots, and it gives you kind of an idea of how each animal differs and how human hair is and how important a hair database could be in identifying species, thus saving a lot of money not going to the laboratory and having the DNA tested. Each hair is like a fingerprint. A trained analyst can not only tell what species the hair came from, but in some cases they can actually identify the individual. Okay, we've had some fun looking at different animal hairs. Now we want to look at high probability Bigfoot hair. And when I say high probability Bigfoot hair, it's because it doesn't really match any other hair samples, but it also seems to match up other databases found in places like the Bigfoot Research Organization, or BFRO, and other hair samples found around the United States which are species unknown. Again, we have come to a good stopping point, and we will stop here and continue with part 4, which will be following shortly.